everyone, welcome to my video. I'm Nela Safira Putri and now I would like to explore something interesting. What is that? So, in this video, I would like to present about interpretation. So, keep watching. Okay guys, first, what is the interpretation? Interpretation is different from translation, but conceptually and historically, although same, considered them similar. Translation and interpretation have different procedures and concepts from each other. For example, Russian and Soviet language do not have a common term for interpretation. The term translation is used with additional description such as oral translation, which means the equivalent of the interpretation. Next is the historical twist of language interpretation. The interpretative approach known as theme interpretation translation or theory per makna is a method of oral and written translation developed by members of the ESIT group. And this approach was developed in the 1960s through research on conference interpreting and was pioneered by Denita Seleskovich. Next is the relationship between interpretation and other scientific approaches. In the fight of translation and interpretation, interpretative theories of translation play an important role during 1960 until 1970. Although linguistic and applied linguistic theories have considered to explain the translation process, interpretative foundation made significant contribution, especially in the fight of pragmatism. Next, communicative competence. Communicative competence is the ability that an individual must have to communicate appropriately in a particular language community. The relationship between communicative competence and interpretation competence lies in the individual's ability to communicate in a social, culture, context, and particular situation. Next, about the type of learning, have three. The first is second language, foreign language, and the last is auxiliary language. Okay, let's discuss one by one. Start from second language. Second language is a language that learned and used in environment where the majority of the population are native speakers of the foreign language. Example, Spanish speaker from the United States who is learn English. And the second is foreign language, refers to language learned in a foreign language environment without much opportunity to interact directly with native speakers. And the last is auxiliary language. Auxiliary language is language often has a limited function in social interaction. For example, English is used as medium of exchange in international trade. That's about the history of language interpretation. Now we discuss about legal study in language interpretation. Start from expertise in interpretation and its impact. Expertise in interpretation plays a crucial role in the effectiveness of cross-language communications. A highly skilled interpreter ensures that the conveyed message remains accurate without losing the meaning in the same language. And interpretation expertise goes beyond masking two languages. It also involves a deep understanding of culture, idiomatic expression, and the social context surrounding the conversation. And a personal interpreter must also possess active listening skill, quickly thinking, and a strong memory to process information in real time. And there are several experts that contribute on building up interpretation. The first is linguistic, the second is psychology and psycholinguistic, third is sociolinguistic, fourth social psychology, and the last is linguistic terapan. Study of interpretation and translation, according to Professor Daniel Gill as an interpreter. Daniel Gill's effort model are the series of models that help interpreters understand the challenges of interpreting and choose appropriate strategy. The model was based on that mental energy is limited while interpreting requires a lot of energy, and some of the key concepts of the efforts included: the first is processing capacity, and the second is the fact the same mental operation in oral translation require considerable processing capacity. Okay, next, the second is challenges in interpretation and quality improvement efforts. After the interpretation models introduced by Gill become increasingly used in interpretation studies, Anthony Pym deepened this study by highlighting the importance of context in interpretation, especially in simultaneous interpretation. He criticized as interpretation strategies often change depending on the context. The dynamics of these strategy changes have the potential to cause errors in interpretation. If the same error continues to be repeated without being realized, then it can be categorized as an interpretation error. One challenge in simultaneous interpreting is that the accent of non-native. So that's one of the challenges in interpretation. Next, we discuss about the relationship between interpretation and language. Language interpretation is inseparable from linguistic studies, as the interpretation process involves a profound understanding of language, not namely a collection of words. It also consists of pragmatics, systematics, and syntax. Furthermore, interpretation is closely related to language variation, such as dialect and then register and speaking style, and interpreters must understand how language is used in different contexts to deliver message appropriately. So that's explanation about legal study in language interpretation. Next chapters we discuss about interpreter. In Bahasa is juru bahasa. I have two types from the expert. The first is typed by Jacobson, and then the second is typed by Brisley. Okay, start from typed by Jacobson. Have three main point. The first is intralingual translation. Is mean that transforming an expression in a particular language into another form in the same language. And the second is interlingual translation. It means that translate from one language to another verbally. And the last is intersemiotic translation. It means that translate verbal language into non-verbal of communication. Next, typed by Brisley have four main points. The first is pragmatic translation, is that focus on the accuracy of information in the translation process. And the second is aesthetic poetic translation, is that prioritize aesthetic elements in the social language, including emotion, expression, and then feelings. The third is ethnographic translation, considering culture aspects in the translate process. And the last is linguistic translation, emphasize the equivalence of meaning and grammatical structure between the search language to target language. Next, explanation about aspects that interpreters should have. Interpreters refers to someone who translates conversation orally to aid communication between language. One must have a deep understanding of the source and target language, the cultural context of both language as well as the topic being translated. In addition to linguistic skill, an interpreter must also master several aspects of linguistics. The first is lexicon or kosakata, is that understanding the meaning of the word, its pronunciation and structure, and recognizing word combination and idioms in the language being translated. The second is phonology. This means the understanding the difference in sounds that evoke the meaning of words or poems, and then recognizing syllable structure, intonation, pattern, stress, tone, short length of sounds. And the third is morphology. It means that master meaningful word for forms or morphemes and understanding word inflection and the use of affixes that can change meaning. And the last is syntax. It means that understanding grammar rules in sentence formation, adjust sentence structure to the type of statement, question, or information being conveyed. And the last is structure, nonverbal. Nonverbal structure. It means that use facial expression, gesture, and spatial distance and orientation in communication. Okay, next, the last one, is that discourse. It means that organize information logically in a communication and understanding patterns of interaction in various situations such as narrative, conversation, and discussion formats. Okay, next we discuss about the characteristic of interpreters. Have six the characteristic. The first is excellent language proficiency. This means that bilingual or multilingual proficiency must master two more language with a high degree of fluency in terms of vocabulary, structure, idioms, and register. And second is active listening skill, able to listening with high focus, chapter, key message, and distill important information quickly. Okay, number three is ability to process and recall information. Interpreters must have a good short-term memory to retain information before it is transferred to the target language. The fourth is communication and articulation skills. Must be able to convey the message clearly, precisely, and fluently in the target language. Number five is neutrality and objectivity. The interpreters must not add personal opinions as emphasized in the AIIC, Internal Association of Conference Interpreters, Professional Code of Ethics. Interpreters must maintain confidentiality and neutrality. And the last characteristic is cross-culture competence. It means that understanding the social and cultural context of both language is essential to avoid misunderstanding and mistranslation. Next, about what is the differences between interpreter and translation. Start from interpreters. Interpreters work with direct oral communication and require strong listeners, speaking, and memory skill. They must also have cultural sensitivity as well as the ability to read nonverbal cues. Interpreters usually work in various sectors such as medical, legal, conferences, and communities. And then translators focus more on the written text. They are able to have high reading and writing skill as well as the ability to conduct research to ensure the accuracy of the translation. A translator usually specializes in certain files such as medicine or finance, and often we use guided translation tools, CAT tools, to improve their efficiency. The last explanation from these chapters is the role of interpreter from a linguistic perspective. The first is don't just translate word by word, but also transferring meaning, sentence structure, tone, and cultural context. And the second is must understand phonology, sound system, morphology, syntax, and semantics. And the third is adapt the language register, formal or informal, based on the situation. And the last is must also understanding pragmatics, which is the intended meaning behind an utterance. For example, sarcasm, comments, and emotion. That's about the explanation from this chapter. Okay, the last we discuss about the process of interpretation. The process of interpretation. Language interpretation is the mental and technical process carried by an interpreter when translating spoken language from one language to another language in real time. This process is fast and complex. And the importance of interpretation skill for professionals. Interpretation skills are not only important for interpreters themselves, but also very useful for other professionals such as diplomats, tour guide, and then hospital staff and lawyer. Here's why, because the first is facilitating cross-cultural understanding. In global work settings, many interactions occur between people from different cultures. Interpretation helps convey a message accurately and respectfully across culture boundaries. And the second is parenting misunderstanding. Informal communication, such as in court or business negotiation. A misinterpreted message can have serious consequences, so interpretation skills are intentional. The third is enhancing professionalism and confidence. Professionals who can interpret well are seen are more capable and reliable and confident by clients or partners. And the last is supporting international careers. Many international jobs require interpretation skills such as UN worker and then tour leader and then embassy staff and others. Next, about the interpreter training process and its challenge. Interpreter training is a structured and intensive process aimed to equipping individual with the necessary linguistic, cognitive, and interpersonal skill. And according to interpreting scholar like Andrew Gills and Daniel Gill, interpreter training typically include the following phase and training process. The first is language proficiency development. The second is active listening and analysis. The third is note-taking techniques. And then number 4 is simulation interpretation practice. The 5 is role-playing and real-time simulation. And the last is feedback and assessment. Okay, next is the challenges in interpreter training. The first is cognitive overload. Interpretation requires listening, processing, and speaking almost simultaneously. Beginners often experience mental fatigue. And the second is anxiety and confidence issue. Many trainers struggle with public speaking and real-time pressure, which can hinder performance. And the third is accent and speed of speakers. Real-life speaker may talk too fast, mumble, or use unfamiliar terms. And the fourth is limited training resources. And the last is ethical dilemmas. Trainers need to learn how to manage confidentially and then naturally and cultural sensitivity. Okay, the last explanation from these chapters is model of interpretation training. There are several widely used models of interpreters training based on international best practice. The first, from the Gill-Ewart model, first proposed by Daniel Gill. This model breaks interpretation into mental efforts. The first is listening and analysis effort, production effort, memory effort, and then coordination effort. And these models have training identified where breakdowns occur during training. The second is integrated practice model, combines theory with practice by integrating classroom instruction with simulated professional environment. The third is competency-based training model, focus on scientific competency, linguistic, cognitive, technical, and ethical. And then assessment is based on demonstrated performance rather than hours completed. And the last is blend learning approach, mix of in-person and online models, useful for training interpreters in remote area or during travel restriction. Alright everyone, that's all explanation about interpretation. I hope you understand what I mean, and thank you for watching this video, and see you in another video. Bye!